Hi, this is Sarah Lingra, and welcome to the first lesson that you will ever need for piano. And what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you the journey. I'm going to tell you what stuff you need, and then I'm going to kind of outline what this course is. This course that will be followed by another 7 to 9 videos afterwards, where the videos are going to be actual lesson videos. And so I will go over exactly what I do in the first lesson, giving you time to process the information and play along with me. Now, before you even play a single note, just want to say how happy I am to have you here. You're learning for future you, so even if you're not perfect today or tomorrow, keep in mind that in 20 years, you'll be really great. Also, keep in mind that the way I've started teaching now, you're going to learn stuff in 2 to 3 months that took me a lot longer. With some chords, I almost get tearful because I am able to teach my students in less than a year what it took me literally 20 years to figure out. So even if you feel like you're not making progress, trust me, you totally are. Language will be confusing a bit in the beginning. I'll be using proper terminology like diatonic triads and seventh chords and whatever, and you might not understand what they are. Watch the videos again, play around with them, and then at some point you're going to have one of those aha moments. Learning is going to be awkward. I am doing everything I possibly can to make it easy, but there are things that your expectations are here and your ability is here. What I find is expectations and ability or experience for students is like this, expectations, experience. But from my perspective, my expectations are here and my experience is always exceeding expectations. So, especially if you're an adult, adults have a sense that they have to get things perfect from the very beginning, and that's just not always the case, which is completely normal. You're going to have lots of aha moments. Things are going to make sense, and then you're going to get home and you're going to be like, it made sense, and now it doesn't. And then you're going to have that feeling of it made sense, and you're not going to remember what the feeling was or what you tied into that feeling. Totally normal. Aha moments too. Even now, after teaching for 35 years, I'll be working with a student and something will occur to me and I'm like, duh, why didn't I see that 20 years ago or whatever? I'm always surprised by how there's always something that I can learn. It's very cool. Be curious, not critical. A lot of the stuff that I'm doing is going to be presenting a scaffold. And so what you hang on the scaffold is going to be up to you. So if you are listening with an open ear and an open mind and an open heart, then what you're playing is going to be musical, not necessarily, even if it doesn't quite match what you expected or what the music or whatever was going on, which is normal. My goal here is to get you to play the piano and then play pieces on the piano. There's a difference. Playing the piano means I can sit at the piano and play for several hours without repeating myself or without getting bored, but I'm not actually playing specific pieces. I'm just playing music and making music. All right, so that's kind of like the introduction. Now, what I'm going to tell you is what you need to be able to go along with me with this. And you can find all of these materials at pianokeyfinders.com. So the first is the Keyfinder Keeper. When I created the cards, I needed a way to keep them organized for my students, so I made the folder. This folder, though, has all of this real estate that I printed on. So on the bottom of the folder is the key name card, which is one thing that I recommend getting. The key name card looks like this. It slides behind the keys, and you line it up with the black keys, and it gives you the names of all the keys on the piano. You can see here, it gives you the letter names of the white keys plus a sharp and a flat for all of them, and you can see that it's color-coded going through this. This is super helpful for beginning piano students if you don't know the names of all the keys, especially the ones that have confusing names like the E sharp or the F flat or the C flat and the B sharp. This, even though it seems like it's a thing for beginners, is also really helpful for more advanced students when you are learning how to transpose. I discovered something with a student, this is again one of those aha moments, a few weeks ago, where I can use it to transpose on the fly. So it's worth getting. You'll also want to get the double-sided cadence cards. They look like this. They're printed on both sides so that you get your money's worth. And the 5-note scale and chord cards, okay? And let me give you a little background on why I started creating these. There's also 4 PDFs, which I'll get into later. So I live on a property where I can have workshops, and 3 years ago, in 2023, we were hosting a jazz guitar workshop here. And I was watching the guitarists as they were teaching and having a conversation with one of them. And preface to say, I'm not a guitarist, I'm not even an air guitarist, but I do understand the idea of having your hand on the neck. Here's my lame air guitar, forgive me, Nikolai, who plays guitar. You have your hand on the neck, you form a shape with your hand, and then you slide your hand up and down on the neck of the guitar, and you can transpose from one key to the next. And I don't know what it was, but for some reason, it occurred to me that the keys of the piano, this right here is called the fallboard, and they're all the same width at the fallboard, okay? So the white keys are wider here, let's see, wider here, you know, at the edge, and then the black keys are narrow, but you'll see that there's a gap around the black keys, and the center points of all of these are equally spaced, and so all of these are the same. So if you have a hand shape for a chord, and you have it on a card that shows you behind here, you can move that card back and forth on the keys and you can transpose. Now, the first song that these guys were teaching was called Autumn Leaves, and Autumn Leaves uses what's called 7 diatonic 7th chords. Now, diatonic means that these are chords that are built with the notes of a scale. So if I'm in the key of C major, there's C major, and if I use the notes of the scale and I go up, I get a C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and then I'd hit C again. So those are called diatonic triads, because triads are 3-note chords, and that's what we're going to be focusing on here. But the jazz guys were using diatonic 7th chords, and 7th chords are 4-note chords, but they still exist within that scale. So from there, I created this set of cards. And the first one that I did was this one, which uses, you can see that each of these color-coded things has 4 note heads in it. And so this was a diatonic 7th chord progression, and then the other 3 of the 7 chords are on the back side. So this is what I was doing with all of my students from 2023, and I found that I could get them learning all of their chords in all 12 different keys in a very short period of time. And as I said, it was exciting, and at the same time, I felt a little twinge of jealousy because it took me literally over 20 years to be able to learn those chords the hard way. And so here I have students who have had less than a year of piano lessons, who understand these chords, who are able to play them in different keys and are starting to be able to manipulate them to play other pieces. Okay, so from there, a few months ago, I had a few new adult students and some younger students. The younger students, you know, like 10, 11-year-olds, they don't have the width in their hand span to be able to play 7th chords comfortably. And so I realized that perhaps I shouldn't be focusing so much on the 7th chords. I should be doing the triads, namely the 3-note chords, because your stretch is less. And then I thought, oh, well, if I do the triads, we can go around the circle of fifths, which is pretty easy. And then from there, we can build it up. And that's what I'm about to show you here. So I'm going to kind of walk you through the process, and then after this video, I'm going to record separate individual videos on each step of the process, okay? So over here, this is the circle of fifths. I use this in every lesson from the very first time a student steps in. On this one, you have the major circle on the outside, and then we have a minor circle on the inside. And the circle of fifths, every time we're playing around with it, there's another interesting, cool thing that we see out of this. And the reason why I think this is so important is because when you learn how to play the piano, you're not just playing these 3 keys, C, F, and G. You actually are playing part of a system, and that system is using the whole circle. So you can't understand what the system is if you're only seeing a very small section of it, which makes going around the circle really interesting. Also, going around the circle is motivating. People like getting to the end. Okay, so in the first lesson, we use, if they need it, the card that tells you what the names of the keys are. I'm not going to put that on today because we can do that in the lesson. And then on the major side, the tonic or the key is whatever this arrow is, and I'm going to line this up on the piano, and then I'm going to line up a scale card at some point in the future. So in a first lesson with a student, the first thing that we do is I pull out the circle of fists and this card, and either with the right hand or the left hand, I will line this up on a C. Okay? And I will use a sticky note to hold it in place, but I'm going to just hold it in place with a hand here. And I'll have them do the 1-4 chord. So I'm going from C major to F major. And then I'm going to take that yellow arrow and I'm going to move it over to where the red arrow was. Or I'm going from the C key to the G key, which is on the circle. And then I'm going to do the same thing. And you see, I've just transposed that same pattern. This one uses 1-3-5. To 1-2-5. So I'm moving pinky and thumb arm here. I'm moving from the 3 to the 2. The next one is D, so I'm going to move the arrow down to D. And I'm going to go around the whole circle doing that. Then I'll do the same thing with the right hand. So here's going from the C chord to the F chord. Then I would slide this up, move it to the G, and do this G chord to the C chord. And I'll go around the whole circle doing that. So that would be lesson number 1. Doing the chords, just using the 2 bottom chords of the card, going around the circle of fists. The second lesson, or the second half of that lesson, depending on the length of the lesson, and this would be the second video, is doing the same thing but using the minor triads. So going from orange to purple. So if I started, and usually when I start going around the circle of fists and I'm doing the minor, I'll start on A minor. So I go from A to D. And then I would move it up to E, E to A. Did I get that right? Yep. And then I would go to A. I've got myself off. There's airplanes flying ahead. I lost my train of thought. So A to E, moving it to E. Then moving it to B. So B minor, E minor, and I'd go around the circle doing the same thing. Easy to lose focus when you're doing this in the beginning, so I guess that's just the way it goes. So that would be the first part. The next thing that I do is I have these little sketches, and the way I think of sketches is if you are an artist and you are doing portraits and you are learning how to do portraits, maybe you're going to focus on drawing an eye, or you're going to focus on drawing lips, you're going to do an ear. And you can do a sketch of an eye or an ear or lips or a partial part of the face or some hair or whatever. And you can make those things really beautiful. And you can actually have that be an art thing on its own. And then it's also contained in the larger picture when you do the whole head. And so I consider these little sketches. And so the second or third video in the series is going to be doing one of these sketches. And this one, the way I would set it up is I would I'm going to do this in C major, the yellow arrow on C with one card and the yellow arrow on C with the other card. And I'm going to secure them in place with a transparent sticky note so I can still see them. And generally I only have to do it on one. If you have an electric piano, these cards tend to stay in place in the electric piano. So I'm going to be going from the yellow to the blue chord, or C to F. And then I've got the notes of the 5-note scale. So this 1-4 chord thing sounds like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2. So that is one of the first things that my students learn how to play. And It's not difficult because we've already learned how those chords move, and we're only doing 4 notes of the 5-note scale in the other hand. When we play the C chord by itself, it's just plain old C chord, but when we play the F chord with a D, it's more interesting because now it's an F major 6 or a D minor 7th. Again, this will come more naturally the more you do it. Once we're done with it in C, then I slide the card over and we're going to transpose it into G. There it is again. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2. And then from there, now once you get doing this, you'll find that maybe that melody isn't as exciting as it should be. So I encourage my students to improvise and create their own melodies once they've established that sense of rhythm. Now, by the time a student has gone all the way, or by the time you've gone all the way around the circle, you've internalized that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, which is a really, really, really common rhythm. It sounds nice. My students, the feedback that I get from people who are using this are like, we like doing these because they sound nice, they are building skills, and there's a sense of satisfaction that one gets when you go around the circle of fifths. Then, the next part of the series, we're going to flip it and we're going to do something in the minor keys. And I'm going to start on D minor just because that's where the card ended up. And again, I have written all of these little exercises out. So the one that we're going to be doing next is 1 minor, 4 minor. So it's using the same chord pattern except for this one's in minor. So this is going from D minor to G minor. And this one can be done 2 ways. The first time that I did it, I was doing it like this. But what I found is that for some students that rhythmic pattern was a little challenging. So instead of doing that, we're going to be doing it blocked. And this one uses all of the notes of the 5-note minor scale. So if I'm in D minor, then I'm going to be... So the harmony sounds like this. Now when I play it as written, now this one's great because D minor, G minor 6, or it forms 2 chords. You're getting these more interesting, rich harmonies. The kinds of melodies that come from this pattern, once you get it in your fingertips, there are many different pieces that you can use this as a starting point. So then we've got all of the majors and all of the minors in both hands. We've already done the 1-4 chord progression in this, going from a root position to a second inversion chord, majors and minors. From there is when it really starts to get interesting. And the next step is one of 2 directions. Direction 1 is the Pachelbel canon chords, and direction 2 is, I call it 4 Padme, but these are chords that are used in Handel's Baroque. They were used very commonly in Baroque suites, but they have traversed musical time. So they're, 400-ish year old, 350 to 400 year old chords that are still prevalent in so much music today, that once you learn how to do this, you have just opened the floodgates to all of the different things that you can do. What's also really exciting about this is they sound great. And because they're in all 12 keys and they're engaging and interesting, you can do them for a long time, building up skills, and it's so cool. So, Pachelbel, I'm going to start it in C. The left hand, just because I'm starting it in C does not mean that I'm not aware that it was originally written in D major and that everybody's going to be doing this in all 12 keys anyway. This one has an 8-chord pattern. There's only 6 chords in this pattern. The other one, which is in a minor key, is an 8-chord pattern, but it has all of its diatonic triads, so diatonic 3-note chords. The chord pattern, when we do these in the right hand, the fingering for every single chord is exactly the same because it's the same pattern that was already built using that 1-4 chord progression that we did both in the major and the minor in the beginning. So you can see that you lay down the foundation, then you add something to the foundation, you add something to the foundation, and you keep building it up. And every time you repeat it, you are increasing the skills for being able to do all of it. So here we have easy to get bored with that because it gets so repetitive. So then you so that's Pachelbel in the key of C. And then the next one down is G. G, D, E minor, B minor, C, G, C, D. And on all of these, I've written the chord names on the top of the sheet so that you can follow along and get those chords. Also, the chord names in a lot of cases are what your root note is for the left hand. So it's reinforcing. In D major, and so on and so on. And the thing is that when I'm doing this for, I have a jazz combo, hence the shirt, Deceptive Cadence, that's my combo. And everything that I write out, because it's in 12 keys, I can use over there to teach improvising, to teach keys, to teach scales, to teach chords, to teach triad tones or whatever it is, because they just figure out whatever note it is in concert and then they've got all the music. Now, that's true with Pachelbel, which we use for getting really comfortable in playing the notes of the scale of whatever the key is, but the one for Padme. So I have this lovely student who's a friend of mine that I've known for, I would say like a very large portion of my adult life. And we were playing a thing called Vivaldi Variations last week, literally. And I noticed that when she was reading it, it was accurate, but it didn't flow because when you read things hands together, initially it takes a little bit of time to be able to do this. So I said, well, what if we just played the bass line and had you play it as chords where you're doing the root with the left hand and the chords with the top and see what happens. Now, Vivaldi was a Baroque composer, so he was composing around the same time that Georg Friedrich Handel was on this. The chords that I'm using here are actually taken from a Pascaglia that he did in a suite in G minor, that suite number 7. So we're playing through that, and then I'm like, okay, well, what if we wrote out these chords? And I write them in musical format. And again, using the same fingerings for the right-hand chords, using this 1-4 chord progression where you're going from a root position to a second inversion chord. And if I do this with the left hand first, I'm using all of the notes of the natural minor scale. So by playing through these, I'm training my left hand to play in whatever key it happens to be in. So A, D, G, C, F, B, E, A. Now, it also happens that on the circle of fifths, it goes A, D, G, C, F, B, E, A. So I'm using all of the notes that make up that A minor scale from here. So, so that's kind of useful too. You're going around the circle of fifths. Now, it's written as a harmonic minor. Again, this will be explained in more detail in the video that actually goes with this, the teaching video that goes with this. So because it's written in harmonic minor, when you're doing a harmonic minor, you're raising the 7th note of the scale, which is the note that makes this chord here major rather than minor. These are triads, so the chord progression is A minor, D minor, G, C, F major, B diminished, E major, A minor. If these were diatonic 7th chords, it would be A minor 6 or 7, depending on what the piece is, D minor 7, G7, C major 7, F major 7, B minor 7 flat 5 or half diminished, E7, A minor. So here is the same progression. We're in the key of D minor. And then the Passacaglia from Handel was written originally in G minor. And it was something like... So and it was a theme and variations. And so as you go through this theme and variations from the Handel, you're like, oh, those chords sound vaguely familiar. Now, remember in the beginning that I mentioned that the reason that I got started doing this was that I was at this guitar workshop and they were doing Autumn Leaves, and they had this chord progression that was these diatonic 7th chords. And when I started my students, I was like, diatonic 7th chords, woohoo, we're all gonna do it, right? And then over time, I realized that, as I said, small hands might not be comfortable on diatonic 7th chords, but they could certainly manage the triads. So this weekend, I was at having a rehearsal, and we were playing Fly Me to the Moon. Now, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm really in tune to the colors that I use and can spot patterns pretty quickly. And I was looking at this thinking, A minor, D minor, G major, C. It sounded familiar. It just so happens that it's a complete coincidence, but orange, purple, red, yellow, turns out that there was a card for this already done. And these chords in this card are actually those chords in this card. And not only that, but we have the Roman numerals here. It's a 6-2-5-1. And a 6-2-5-1 is like one of the big chord progressions that you have in pop music and jazz and all of these things, but not just pop and jazz. So, or A minor, D minor, G7, C major, or it's the Chopin Waltz in A minor. It's also Barbie Girl and this whole list of other things. And so then I'm looking at the colors again a little more closely. A minor, D minor, G7, C, which is this, but then there's an F after that. And if I take the F off of it, then the chord combination is D minor, G, C, F, which is not in these inversions. But if I took off the 7th of the 7th chords, then it's D minor, G7, C major, F major. So it's a 2-5-1-4, namely the same chords that were in Autumn Leaves, the first 4 of that diatonic 7th chord progression. And then I'm looking at this thinking B diminished, E, A, And it just so happens that the 7th chords are B minor 7 flat 5, E7, A minor 6. And so the chord progression that we have here for Padme from this Baroque thing is actually the same chord progression minus the A chord at the beginning as Autumn Leaves, which is what got me kicked off on this thing in the first place. But even more so, it's also Fly Me to the Moon. So bum, 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 bum. And we happened to be doing Fly Me to the Moon yesterday, or Saturday at our rehearsal. So here's the same thing for Autumn Leaves and Fly Me to the Moon, but this is the chord progression that is like the backbone of jazz and improvising. And so not only are you going to be able to do this after we go through this whole progression, but I can use these with my combo because I've written out all of these patterns, and it turns out that the Passacaglia has a variation that has a walking bass line that's pretty much the same walking bass line that you would use when you're learning how to do walking bass lines with this chord progression. And so starting with Autumn Leaves and the 2-5-1-4, 2-5-1 thing, and then going full circle, because I like circles and I like bringing it all together, we are ending up in the same place, namely on the same chords that started, 400 years ago and have come all the way to current everything. So this video is to show you the possibility, because this is what I do with my students for the first couple of months of lessons and even beyond. And it allows them to play, allows you to play all of this really cool stuff from the very beginning. It is so interesting. There is not a single lesson that I have had since I started using these cards that hasn't been exciting for both the student and for me, even though I think my students might feel a little overwhelmed in the beginning. They stick it out and it's amazing. I have never seen progress that this quick with students in my 35 plus years of teaching. It's just amazing. And I am so delighted to have you here. So you can get the materials at pianokeyfinders.com. I am currently working on creating all of the music and putting it in a book format. I don't want to call it a method book because I think method books are pretty torturous. So a sketchbook, something or other book, if you have any ideas on what I could call it, I would be dying to hear what it is. And then over the course of the next couple of months, I'm going to be recording the videos, actually probably next couple of weeks. This is too exciting not to sit on. I'm going to be recording the videos of all of these things to go along with this, because I want to make sure that you are not completely overwhelmed after that lesson. So these are for my students, but also for you, who hopefully is one of these students as well. I tell you, this is just it's so exciting. I am so thrilled to have you here, and I am grateful for your time. So thank you very much. This is Sarah Linger with Piano Key Finders.